yourself. Homemade. Well, well, well. Laxmana, Laxmana. Are we ready to go? Yes? How nice. Okay, I'm ready for your signal. Can you hear me? As you propose out there in Zoom land, can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu, we can.
Okay, that's you got some feedback, so I don't know how do you cut out the feedback.
No, Maharaj, actually, I was having two systems, so yeah, we are good.
Okay, okay, that's how you get the feedback. Okay, so I'm ready to begin. You just adjust the volume a little bit because his voice is pretty loud. Can you hear is my voice too loud or the volume is good?
Volume is good, Maharaj.
Okay, our volume in this room is too loud. You got to turn the volume in this room is too loud. Okay, we're adjusting knobs and dials and things. Are we ready to begin? We're ready to
Hare
begin.
Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We're continuing. This is part 2 of Laxmana, which is nearly the conclusion. One more evening should do it. Nearly a conclusion for the whole of the personalities from Ramayana series. And Lakshmana, of course, is a very important personality. quickly, we just discussed the primary characteristics of his personality. Sheshatvam, he was always in the mood of service. Paratantriam, he was always dependent upon Lord Ram for the success of his service. And it was like that from the very, very beginning and to the very, very end. And at the end, we'll hear the very, very end, how he left this world. It's very interesting. We heard about the appearance of the four brothers as an arrangement of Rishishringa and a yagya for having four sons. Lord Vishnu told the demigods, I will appear as four brothers. He expanded in the Chatur Vyuha features of the Lord. And from the very, very beginning, Lakshman and Ram were always together. And we heard of how they went together with Vishwamitra Muni, and they were married together. They married sisters. Did you know that? Did you know that? You know the whole story. Okay. What was his sister's name? Who married Lakshmana? Sita's sister's name was Urmila. Very good.
Urmila.
Yes. Well, I'm just asking this young devotee in our room, so our online people know what's going on over in the room over here. They were married. They came back. They lived in Ayodhya, and we heard the bad news. Kaikeyi's wish to have her two boons fulfilled, and disbelief. Lakshman was in a rage. He wanted to destroy everybody that opposed Ram becoming the king. Ram pacified him. And where we ended up yesterday evening, after Sita persuaded Ram to take her to the forest, Lakshman successfully persuaded Ram to let him come to the forest. And that's where we ended. And that's where we were beginning. There's a nice painting that's showing Lakshmana falling at the feet with gratitude that he's going to take him with him to the forest for 14 years. And as promised yesterday, one of the very first persons he went to inform his good wife what was the result. Can that go full screen? Is there some way that can go full screen? Because it's the paintings make a big difference if it's full screen or not. Okay, so I pay attention because it's going to be short and sweet. When Lakshman went to inform Urmila, now you've been hearing, those of you that are participating in this, you know that there's many versions of Ramayana, enough to make your head spin. But some of them are really bona fide. So one of them is a 13th century Telugu compiler of Ramayana called Raghunath Ramayana, and the author's name is Gona Buddha Reddy. But it's a very beautiful description. Lakshman comes to Urmila's quarters or room. Urmila, the beautiful wife of Lakshmana, was an exemplary artist. She immersed herself daily in painting canvases. No one except Lakshmana was allowed anywhere near her when she was in her painting frenzy. She had been painting her favorite couple, Ram, and her sister, Sita. That fateful day, It was a rather serious depiction, the coronation of the most exquisite couple in the universe. In fact, she had just finished painting it. Irmela considered it her masterpiece and had planned to gift it to the royal couple as soon as they returned from their coronation. A clatter somewhere nearby had startled the sensitive Irmela. The bowl of wet paint in her hands had splashed all over the painting, defacing it completely. Her masterpiece had been ruined. Angrily, she turned around to see what had made her jump right into her priceless painting. Her anger had dissipated the moment she saw her husband. Look what happened. I was painting Lord Ram and Sita's coronation scene. This is an inauspicious omen. What do I do now? You can paint it 14 years from now, Irmela. Ram has been exiled to the forest for 14 years, and Bharata will be the king instead. Lakshman spoke in an attempt to pacify his beloved wife. What? How could this happen? You'll understand everything with time. What you need to understand now is that the delicate Sita will accompany Ram to the forest, and to serve them both, I must go too. Irmela had grasped the situation and immediately gathered herself. An awkward silence followed. Lakshman had nothing to say. But before the hush could stretch too long, Irmela had said something that remained etched in Lakshman's heart and be his beacon of hope through the next 14 years. It's very beautiful. Opportunities to serve superiors come unsought to ones who yearn for them. Creating an atmosphere for another to serve in a focused manner is also service. I would love to accompany you to the forest, but I will not. My joining in would invariably come in the way of your service to Ram. Your duty could be compromised because of my presence. The duty of a wife is to constantly be in the company of her husband. But to fulfill my duty, how can I obstruct yours? Performing a duty serves its purpose only when the object of duty is pleased. If I insist that I do my duty to you by accompanying you, you will be displeased because the object of your duty, Ram, will be displeased with your negligence. So, my duty now is to facilitate the perfection you can attain in your responsibility by staying away. One more. The essence of your going with Ram is sacrifice. You are sacrificing your comforts, your wife, your wealth, your opinion, and your pleasures. Following your example, I am sacrificing my desires and my duties. The real duty of a wife is to understand the mood of her husband. I mean, everyone had their different responses, and her response is very, very remarkable. Very, very remarkable. When Ram agreed to take Lakshman, one of the very first things he said to Lakshman and to Sita was, all of your possessions, give them away. It's understood. If you're going to be away and your mind is on your possessions, you're not away. So it's not just in name, but it's in deed. Then he went to see his mother. And his mother was, like everyone else, filled with sorrow to hear this great misfortune. She didn't speak ill of Kaikeyi. who knows what she felt, she gave advice to her son. Serve well your elder brother. The eternal moral law states that the older brother is the refuge of the younger, whether in good times or bad. Never forget the duties of our race, O Lakshmana, which are to practice charity, perform sacrifices for the good of the people, and to lay down one's life on the field of battle. That's pretty intense for a mother to say to her son, but she's of royal heritage and understands duty and understands her duty as mother. And her final words, blinded by tears, Sumitra called out, farewell, dear son, farewell. Three, always see Ram as you do your father, Dasarath. Look upon Sita as myself, your mother, and see the forest as Ayodhya. Really beautiful, really beautiful. So Lakshman's favored by an amazing, very, very amazing wife and a very, very amazing mother. And his stepmother is another story. This is a painting, an old painting that's been redone in a more modern style, the next painting, but there's Vishishta on the right side, pointing a finger at you know who, the one who's to blame for all of this, Kaikeyi. There's Ram putting his forest attire on, and Lakshman, in the moment, he's going to have to show Sita how to wear. The other queens are greatly distressed. Everyone's bewildered. Dasrath is ready to fall over. And the scene is set. They're going to enter into the forest. There's, in this painting, there's defiant Kaikeyi against all odds. And a number of paintings, off they go. There's a B.G. Sharma painting. There's Sumantra at the head of the chariot, and Ram and Sita. It looks a little bit more cheerful than it probably should look. Here's a more realistic picture, an ISKCON version. Beautiful painting, beautiful painting. And you know, the different personalities, King Dasrath running behind, Lakshman motioning to Sumantra, slow down, Ram saying to Sumantra, hurry up. And everyone wanting to follow. And see up on the balcony, up on the tops of the buildings, people are watching. Another very simple drawing that's just the mobs of people following. Another painting of the same, and off they go, heading for the forest. And unbelievable. The very same day he's going to be king, he's off to the forest, wearing tree bark or deer skin. Ram showed by example that whatever the situation is, one should always follow the principles of truthfulness and instructions of wise superiors. Now, one of the lessons that we heard very first day, this is very reminiscent of that first instruction. When one becomes fixed in the personality of Godhead and following the personality of Godhead, one is fixed in proper conduct, then one can withstand any duality thing the material energy sends your way. That's one of the important lessons of Ramayana. That's a big one, because material existence throws circumstances our way that are very troublesome. and how to withstand it. The next scene is they make their way to the river Ganges, because behind them, by circling around Ayodhya, is the river Sarayu, and at some distant place, the river Sarayu and the Ganges merge. But here's a very old painting, and take note, it's all in Arabic. But they love Ramayana too. And at the bottom, that's Guha and Lakshman, and just above them to the right is Sita and Ram taking rest at night. And I want to read a little bit from Krishna Dharma's Ramayana of the conversation between Lakshman and Guha. First, it starts with Guha receives them. Who is Guha? Vishaka, you know who is Guha? He's a forest dwelling ruler, like a king. Guha. Guha means hidden. Guha means hidden. You know who Guha is, right? No? Oh. Well, in Nishada king, he's a forest dwelling king that knew Ram from his many visits to Ayodhya. And he had great affection for Ram, and we'll hear. So Guha has like he's in charge of a lot of people, and he's in charge of the forest under the king. And here comes Ram and Sita and Lakshman and Haribol. What are you doing here in the forest? The king of that territory was named Guha, a dear friend of Ram, who ruled over the tribal people known as the Nishadas. Hearing from his people of Ram's presence, he immediately went to meet him. Guha found Ram by the bank of the Ganges, and he stood at a distance, waiting respectfully for his audience. He was overjoyed to find his friend arrived in his kingdom, but his joy was mixed with sorrow at seeing him dressed as an ascetic. Ram looked up and saw Guha standing there, surrounded by his relations and elderly ministers. Quickly approaching him with Lakshmana, he tightly embraced him and they exchanged greetings. Guha spoke to Ram, whom he had met on many occasions in Ayodhya when going there to pay tribute. I am honored by your presence in my kingdom. This land here is as much yours as it is mine. Indeed, I am your servant. Only order me, and I shall immediately do whatever you wish. He showed Ram the many varieties of food and drink he had brought, as well as the excellent beds he had prepared for them. Ram thanked him and said, I have been well honored by you today. You should know that I am under a vow to live in the forest as an ascetic. I accept your offerings, but allow you to take them back. Please leave only as much as may be taken by my horses. Since these steeds are dear to my father, you will please me by serving them well. Reluctantly, Guha commanded his men to do as Ram had requested, having the best of food brought for the horses. He watched with sadness and admiration as Ram accepted only water for himself and then lay down to sleep on a bed of leaves. Lakshman washed Ram's feet. This is now about Lakshman. He is his brother, and he's washing his brother's feet. He is the servant of Ram. And again, kept vigil nearby. Going over to Lakshman, Guha said, "Here's a bed for you. There is no need to remain awake, for I shall stand here, bow in hand, and guard you all from danger. There is nothing in these woods unknown to me. Indeed, along with my men, I could withstand the attack of a vast and powerful army coming upon this region." Guha took Lakshmana by the arm and showed him the bed, but Lakshman politely refused his offer. "Under your protection we feel not even the least fear, O sinless Guha, but how can I rest while Ram and Sita lie on the earth?" Lakshman looked at his brother lying beneath the tree. His mind was troubled. How could one such as Ram, who is capable of withstanding even the gods in battle, be brought to such a state? Lakshman's thoughts drifted to Ayodhya. He became restless, thinking of his father and the subjects. Surely Dasarath would soon breathe his last, having sent his dearest son to a life of severe austerity. Probably Kaushalya and the king would die that very night, uttering words of despair and anguish, losing their beloved monarch. After watching Ram depart, the people of Ayodhya would be seized with agony after agony. Engrossed in such thoughts, Lakshmana breathed very heavily, like an infuriated serpent. Hot tears glided down his face. Guha placed an arm around his shoulder and gently reassured him as the two men spoke. The night gradually slipped away. So that's Lakshman and his mood of service to Ram. Now, the next morning, the plan was for Guha to make an arrangement of boats to carry Ram, Sita, and Lakshman to the other side of the Ganges. And there's a very nice story in another version of Ramayana besides Valmiki Ramayana that can this image go full screen or no? Does somebody know how to do that? You do what?
Maharaj, actually, the camera has been taken for, is being relayed. So we need to take out that camera in order
Take
not
out the
to
camera.
show you.
Take out the camera, please. Nice to know Big Brother is watching over here. Yeah, do what you need to do. You want the microphone? Okay, I'm glad you're good. Oh, please take a look at the paintings. That's the show. It's not my face. It's
It's
very
better than before, Maharaj.
complicated technology. It's not full screen yet, though. We're getting there. It's a little better. It's a little better, but it's not there yet.
Hari Bol. Good, Maharaj.
There we go. There we go. Can you see the boat?
Yes, clearly. Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. So the story behind the boat and the boatman is a very sweet description. Guha had arranged this boatman with his own nice boat. You see the little canopy above the place where Sita was to sit. Ram gave some instruction. Lakshman, you make sure Sita gets into the boat safely, and then you go to the bow of the boat, and then I will follow. And so Lakshman did as Sita was as he was told. And just as Ram about to step into the boatman, you see his hand gesture. No, 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 don't get in the boat. And you see Guha in the background wondering, what's with this man? And Ram said, what's the reason? He said, I've heard about you. I heard that you stepped on a stone and the stone turned into a lady. And I want you to know, I already have 3 daughters. And I don't want this boat to turn into another daughter. I don't want to take that chance. Then I'd have to marry 4 daughters. I can't do that. So what would you like? He said, I have to wash all the dust off of your feet. It was a trick. And so Ram smiled. Sita looking very distressed. Lakshman's got his bow and arrows ready. But Ram knew what was going on. So the boatman washed his feet thoroughly, 5 times thoroughly, took the water and gave the water to his family members and drank some himself. And then said, okay, now you can get in the boat. And Ram was smiling and he understood. And he safely plied the boat to the other side of the Ganges. And when they got to the other side of the Ganges, Ram said, it is our custom that I should give you some reward, but because I've given away all my possessions, I have nothing to give you for this nice service that you've done. Sita, do you have something? And Sita began searching for something. And the boatman said, no, 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 no. I don't need anything. The fact that you've engaged me in your service is my perfection of life, and that's sufficient for me. That's a nice story. It's not part of Valmiki Ramayana, but it's now the other versions, the Valmiki Ramayana versions. There's a painting here. Guha is the boatman, and they're plying across the Ganges. And Ganges is pretty wide in some places. Apparently, at this place, it was also quite wide. And commentary speaks of the service mood of Lakshman in this circumstance and in all circumstances. Body, mind, and words, totally. Atmani Vedana. No, Atmani Vedana is attributed to Vibhishan when he fully surrendered to Ram. But it's also spoken of about Lakshman appropriately, always engaged in service. Here's another nice painting. They're crossing. Here's a boatman and the Nishada king Guha. See him? Madhur Mohan's got a nice crown on his head in the back of the boat. Yeah, that's Guha. And you know who the others, Ram, Lakshman, Sita. So once they get to the other side, that's it. There's no more Guha. There's no more entourage. It's just the forest and the 3 of them. And 14 years. And just like, the reality is sinking in, Ram is actually very happy. And Lakshman, this is that painting that you saw at the beginning, but this is the color version. And it is said that for the entire 14 years, I don't know how it's possible, but he didn't sleep because he was always watching at night. If there's some danger, he doesn't want Ram to be in danger. And while there in the forest, his position was service, and so he did. There's Sita, another celebrated pose. Ram leaning against the base of a tree, and Sita's massaging his legs and feet, and Lakshman is on guard 24/7. Um, he did many, many different services. This is one painting where he's got a fire going, and you see he's cooking something over there. And this is the whole painting where he's preparing food, and of course, not always cooking something, sometimes just berries and roots and wild things, sometimes carrying water, sometimes whatever the something that was required. That was Lakshman's function. And that is bear in mind. He is an expansion of Lord Ram. He's a personality of Godhead also. He is the original spiritual master also, just like Balaram is, but his mood is the mood of service. And spiritual masters are in such a mood to the Supreme Lord, who is the master of Lakshman. They before they get to Chitrakoot mountain, crossing the Ganges, they come to the ashram of Bhardraj Muni. Bhardraj Muni makes a recommendation where they can stay. We remember who Bhardraj Muni is, right? He's a disciple of Valmiki, disciple, Bhardraj Muni. And he recommends they go to Chitrakoot. It's a mountain, nice place, and they could spend the 14 years there. Of course, he doesn't spend 14 years at one place. And en route, they visit Valmiki's ashram, and Valmiki is very happy to see them. This is one of the commentators speaks that before Valmiki wrote Ramayana, he had darshan of Lord Ram. Like when did he write Ramayana is a question. It's not really clearly written anywhere. What was the chronology of the events that happened for empowering him to write it and his writing it? But commentators say it happened after he saw Ram. And there they go. They go up to Chitrakoot, and a cottage is constructed. We see in the far left, there's Lakshman in a distant little cottage, and front and center is Ram and Sita. Of course, it doesn't show they're up on a mountain, but they're up on a mountain. They're up on a mountain. And here's another nice painting, a little cottage. And Lakshman is standing guard, and Sita and Ram are enjoying one another's company. And they're there for some time and feeling very happy, very peaceful. Ram is appreciating, Sita is appreciating, Ram is appreciating being with Sita, and Ram who are appreciating. And then comes this disturbance. They see in the distance a whole army approaching. Lakshman does the Lakshman. I've got my bow. I'm ready, whoever that is. Lakshman is Kshatriya, and he's going to protect Ram at all costs. And Ram calms him down. And sure enough, he indicated, I think Bharata has come, as this painting shows, to try to persuade me to come back to Ayodhya. See in the lower left, there's some sages or some sadhus or something. But Lakshman is behind Ram, and there's Bharata and Shatrughna. The four brothers are reunited, and there's Sita in the background. This is a very busy painting. It shows like everything. It's like, a few sargas, a few chapters in one painting. And the upper left, that's the queens, and they're coming. There's running is Kaushalya running to Ram, and there's Ram running to Kaushalya. And then in the very, very top, Kaushalya is embracing Ram. And at the bottom center, that's Vishwamitra and other sages greeting Ram, Ram falling at his feet, and so forth. And there you, towards the right center, bottom, that's Bharata deciding he's just going to fast until death and spread some grass and lies down, and Ram convinces him otherwise. So it's many different parts of this whole section. And we already heard about Bharata offering the shoes and all of that. So everyone goes back to Ayodhya. Nice try, but Ram's going to stay in the forest and follow what his father was asking, or Kaikeyi was asking of her father, of their father. And they stay in Chitrakoot for a while, but the sages in the Chitrakoot area start to leave, and Ram asks them why, and they give some different reasons. And the Rakshasas and the bad people in the forest, they've come to know that that's where Ram is, and so they're giving them disturbance, so they're going to leave. So Ram decides to leave. On his way leaving, he goes to the ashram of Atri Rishi, and his good wife, Anasuya, right? Anasuya. And Sita goes to pay her respects to Anasuya. Anasuya gives Sita many nice celestial gifts. There you see outside the ashram is Atri Muni and the two brothers. And Sita's getting her blessings. And that ends the Ayodhya Kanda. And the next Kanda is, which one's the next Kanda? Starts with an A. Aranya Kanda, right? Aranya Kanda. Off they go to the forest. They leave, of course, they're at the perimeters of the forest, but the deep, dark Dandak forest. There's a nice history of how it got the name Dandak. You know the history? No? The whole of Ayodhya was built by whom? Swayambhuva Manu and his son Ikshvaku, right? Ikshvaku. So Ikshvaku was the first ruler, and Ikshvaku had 100 sons, and one of them was named Danda. His name was given Danda because from his astrological chart, he was to be punished. So they gave him the name Danda. And as a kingdom, they gave him this dark forest. But Danda was, really good at organizing things, and he got a really nice kingdom going in that dark forest. But he messed up. He violated a Brahmin's daughter, and the Brahmin was very angry, cursed Dandak and cursed the whole forest. He told his followers, within some number of days, you better leave because the whole place is going to become desolate. And so, sure enough, that's what happened. And then it became a forest, Dandak Forest, named after Danda. And that's where because it was abandoned for so long, that's where Ravan sent some 14,000 soldiers to lay claim over that tract of land, which was actually under the Ayodhya rule. But, they weren't looking after it because 14,000 terrible soldiers were there. So there they go, deep into the Dandak forest. And the first thing that happens, or very soon, is they have an encounter with Virada. And Virada wants to know who they are. What are you doing in the forest here? And you see in the painting, he grabs Sita. Sita screams as she's being grabbed, and he starts running away. And Sita says, "Stop, stop this person." And so uh, Lakshman and Ram cut off his right arm and his left arm, and he fell to the ground and fainted. And they battered the demon with their fists and hands and pounded him on the ground. And he let them know, look, I've got this benediction. I can't be killed. But I have a solution. What's that? You can bury me alive. Oh, very good idea. So there's a painting. Ram's got his foot on the most fortunate Virada's neck. He got Ram's foot on his neck. And somehow, along with the paraphernalia he was carrying, Lakshman had a little shovel. And with a little shovel, he dug a pit. And then they tossed Virada into the pit and covered up the pit. And Virada was saved from that curse because he couldn't die. I mean, usually the other way around. But anyway, he wanted to leave that body. So he did. Now we're focusing on Lakshman, though he's doing some service here. And the next two places they come to, the sage Sharabanga, he sends them to go see this Sutikshna. The question is, where should we stay? In the course of these exchanges, Sutikshna points out a big pile of bones. What's that? That's the bones of rishis that were eaten alive by the Rakshasas. Can you please protect us from the Rakshasas? And Ram makes a pledge to kill those Rakshasa demons that are causing disturbance for the sages in the forest. And they look pretty happy that he's going to protect them. And this is the duty of the king, to protect the Brahmanas. And there's a little section that can take a whole class just to narrate it, but it's Sita then speaks to Ram about her anxiety. You just made this pledge to kill people you don't even know. And she gives her reasons why there may be some risk involved in all of this without going into the whole story because there isn't time to tell the whole story. But her relationship with Ram is very protective of him, although she doesn't need to worry, and he appreciates her affection and her speaking so directly as she did, because it was out of affection only. And there's Lakshman right behind them, making sure everything's protected. And they lived this way for around 13 years, going 13 years, from hermitage to hermitage to hermitage for 13 years, because Ram's giving his association to great sages was part of his purpose. And there we see in the painting, there's Lakshman doing service for Ram and Sita. And around a little before 13 years is when they visit Agastya Rishi, who is Sutikshna's brother. And very important, he gives some celestial weapons. One of those celestial weapons was used to kill Ravan. And he suggests that they stay for the balanced time in the forest at Panchavati. Now, there's details. The ashram of Agastya is described in very, very nice detail, very serene place. Very nice. So there's Agastya giving his blessings to the three. And here comes a Lakshman episode, which we've heard at least twice, but no problem to hear it again. The episode is that when they reach this Panchavati area, Ram says, this seems to match the description that Agastya Rishi gave. Uh, Lakshman, can you please identify a nice place here in this forested area and build a little cottage that will be suitable for your needs, Sita's needs, and my needs? Remember that? Remember that? And Lakshman understands the hint that Ram is expressing. And the hint is, I should never act independently. So Lakshman says, I'm your servant. For as long as this creation exists, as long as I am with you, it can be forever. I'm just your servant, and you please indicate will be pleasing to you, and that's what I'll do. The commentators, particularly it's Govindaraj, comments that way, way back in Ayodhya, when Lakshman was petitioning Ram to let him go with him, he spoke in the doership language. I'll protect you. I'll do this. I'll do that. And according to Govindaraj, Ram said nothing at that time. 13 years later, he says something very indirectly. And because Lakshman is very cultured and very devoted, he gets it. Now, most people don't get something that's indirect and subtle. But Lakshman gets it. And he gets restored to the position of, I'm simply a servant. We discussed this several times. And then at the end, including last night, and at the end, Ram complimented him. Oh, you did such a nice job. You very thoughtfully made some accommodation for a separate room for Sita and close enough to the supplies where you don't have to go so far, so we can get our edibles, and very near to the river where we can take our bath. So very well done. Very well done. So in other words, he was using his creativity within the boundaries that Ram gave him. An important lesson in service. And there they are. Look at that nice cottage. Fantastic. And this is a new episode. The new episode, we read this or heard it in a event-changing manner. Bharata's name is invoked. Here they are 13 years later. And Lakshman's saying, gosh, poor Bharata. He's accustomed to being pampered by his father and by you, having all of his needs taken care of. And there he is, wearing tree bark and sleeping on the floor and eating forest fare. And he is doing the same austerities we are, poor Bharata. The commentators say it's a hint, or it's a game-changing or flow of events-changing conversation where he's indicating indirectly that let's get around to killing the demons, please. Because you've been giving association to the sadhus, pritranaya sadhunam, but the other part is waiting. And in addition, the yadrichchaya word, we spoke about this several times, but you can find it in Valmiki Ramayana, it's there. Somehow or another, Shurpanakha just shows up, looking at Ram like, let's get together, Ram. Woo, woo, woo. And in a very brazen, Rakshasi-like manner, she says, you should marry me. I mean, she doesn't take any time. She doesn't beat around the bush. She just, I can take you. I have the capacity to travel in distant places. I can show you this and I can show you that. Let's go. And look at that puny lady next to you. You know, she's insignificant. And Ram, in a joking way, redirects her attention from him over to Lakshman. There you see Lakshman around the corner of that cottage. And he said, see this young man, he's very handsome too, and he's without his wife, and so, you know, go ahead. And she took it seriously, and he was very handsome, and she made her same proposal to Lakshman. And Lakshman redirected Shurpanakha back to Ram and said, oh, you don't want to be married to a slave. I'm a slave of that fellow over there. He's the one. So she went to him again and said, there's only one thing standing between you and me, and that's that skinny lady over there. And so she started lunging at Sita. Valmiki Ramayana says Ram's voice was so loud, booming voice, she practically was knocked over. It stopped her forward movement. And Ram immediately turned to Lakshman and said, stop her, do what's needed. So that's all Lakshman needed to hear. He had a razor sharp sword. With his razor sharp sword, he did what we hear many times. The nose and ears of Shurpanakha were cut off. And she started bleeding. She started wailing. She started making lots of noise. This painting shows that she changed from a nice looking lady to a Rakshasi lady and flew off, having to let her two brothers, Karandusha, know what happened. There's Lakshman pointing, wait, get out of here. And when she screams and does her thing with Karandushan, um, take revenge, take revenge. So Shurpanakha takes 14 generals to the Panchavati area. Now notice in the upper left of this painting, there's Sita in a cave, and there's Lakshman by the cave. He's protecting, because when the 14 generals came, Ram single-handedly destroyed them all. And then Shurpanakha ran back and said, oh, the 14 generals were killed. What? 14 generals? They're mighty, mighty, mighty soldiers. And so he then ordered his entire army, and he himself came. And there you see this celebrated painting. Single-handedly, Ram destroyed 14,000 generals and Kar and Dushan and Trishiras. We went through those details already. And notice by the tree on the upper right side of that painting, that's the cave where Sita is being guarded by Lakshman, because that's Lakshman's service. Sometimes Lakshman's got his bow and arrow, and sometimes he's just protecting Sita, whatever Ram wants. And here's another painting. Of course, this shows Lakshman with his bow and arrow, but at least with these 14,000 soldiers, it was just Ram. 14,000 soldiers. 14,000 soldiers. So fast forward a little bit. There's Shurpanakha made her way back to Lanka. And underneath that canopy, there's the 10-headed Ravana. And there's Shurpanakha wailing away about what happened, lying about what happened, saying she wanted to bring Sita for Ravana to enjoy. But look what they did to me. So take revenge. And her recommendation is go steal Sita, make Sita yours, and Ram will become weakened, and then he'll be easily defeated. So at the lower part of the painting, in the center, there's a Ravana headed out the back door with his conveyance to take him to meet Maricha. And there's Maricha. This is his second time. It's a nice painting. There's creepy looking people over Ravana's shoulders. Um, and he, threatens. Long story. Well, tomorrow evening we'll hear about Mauritia, and that'll be the end. And so Mauritia agrees. Better to be killed by Ram than by you. And he assumes this shape of the celebrated golden deer. There's many such paintings. Sita sees the deer. Oh, look at that deer. How wonderful. And look closely at Lakshman. He's really skeptical, especially this painting. That's not a deer. That's a Rakshasa. This is a trick. Don't go for it. And Ram agrees to go for it. And because it's a Leela. It's not like he doesn't know. But if even if it is a demon, then I'll just kill the demon and that'll be okay. You stay here and guard Sita, which is his standard service. But as you know the story, um, Ravana had the plan that when if Maricha was killed, then he should call out in a loud voice, sounding just like Ram. Oh, Sita, oh, Lakshman, ah. So that's what happened. And Sita heard Ram's voice. She recognized Ram's voice. And Lakshman, go help. And Lakshman smiles and said, he doesn't need help. It's a Rakshasa trick. Oh, then she accuses him of wanting to become, the enjoyer of her. No way, etc., etc., etc. She threatens to take her life. It's really nasty. She really turns on Lakshman. Lakshman doesn't want to go, but he goes. And at the bottom of this painting, there's Ram shooting an arrow at the deer that turns into Maricha. And at the upper part of the painting, Sita is persuading or insulting Lakshman to go find Ram. There's not part of Valmiki Ramayana, but there's Lakshman making this circle with his bow. Don't step outside the circle. You'll be protected if you stay inside the circle. There's Ravana. That's about Lakshman's role. And it comes in again shortly when searching for Sita after Ravana kidnaps Sita. Notice that little white circle around the cottage. That's the Lakshman Rekha, according to B.G. Sharma. There's Sita throwing her ornaments over the side of the chariot. They're not over Rishimukh mountain yet, but that's okay. It's indicating that she did that. And Ram and Lakshman meet in the forest. And Lakshman's on the left, looking very repentant. Ram observed bad omens, and he hurried back in fear of that situation in his ashram. And much to his surprise, he ran into Lakshman before he got there and told him, it's really wrong. Why did you leave? And then Ram expressed what the omens were that he saw, several bad omens. And he was doubting her safety. So he felt very, very, very bad, Ram, about Sita's safety. It's a transcendental sadness. And they went back to the ashram and it was empty. He's saying, will Sita be alive? I don't want to rule heaven or earth without Sita. If Sita is gone, my life is deserted. I'll give up my life. He's saying very strong things. Here he's admonishing Lakshman. Here they get back and he looks into the ashram. There's no Sita. He looks here, he looks there. No Sita. Open the upper left. It hasn't happened yet, but they find Jatayu in the broken chariot. They're filled with lamentation. This is a very, very intense scene. Um, they find Sita's ornaments strewn here and there, indicating there was some combat. Looking in the ground for tracks. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Ram enters. This is a role for Lakshman to play. Ram enters a role of anger, like he's ready to destroy the universe because of Sita being taken. And Lakshman pacifies him. Oh, first and foremost of men, tell me, who is not subject to misfortune? Earth goes through so much torture and torments. Destroying the creation, what will happen to the innocent people? These gods and all beings are already in fear. Don't further create fear in them, then they will have no shelter. If the heavenly lords do not bestow your wife after all our human efforts, then you may do whatever you want within your powers. Let's first business is find Sita. And if the gods don't permit it, then you can do what you need to do. O best among men, what is it you will gain by performing a complete annihilation? So it works. And Ram is focused again on finding Sita, finding Sita, finding Sita. They head in the direction. There's some clues. They come across Jatayu. Ram has Lakshmana, because our focus is on Lakshmana. He has him perform the rituals because that's one of the services that Lakshman does. And they're still searching. They're spending time together. And as fate would have it, they run into none other than Kabanda. There's a nice painting of Kabanda. Giant body with 8-mile long arms and no head. Just a big mouth. A giant and terrible demon named Kabanda. No head, arms 8 miles long. Ram and Lakshman fought, severing his great arms, and Kabanda fell to the ground. And they asked him, "Have you seen?" He doesn't tell. It's a detail in the commentary, but he wants what he wants first. He says, with this body, I'm not going to be able to have clarity of thought, but you help cremate my body, and then I'll have clarity of thought. So he gets clarity of thought with his body cremated. Then this demigod body comes out of the Kabanda body and says, here's what you should do. You should make an alliance with one who has the very same difficulty as yourself, and that's Sugriva. And here's where you find him. You'll find him by Lake Pampa on the top of Rishimukh mountain. So that's where they go. And look at this. There's Shabari. And Lakshman is right by Ram's side in the whole exchange. And then they meet Hanuman. We heard Lakshman is saying to Hanuman who he is. Remember that in the very beginning? Yeah, the very beginning. I am the servant of the illustrious Lord Ram. He's my elder brother. I serve him because of all of his great qualities, especially outstanding as he's very kind, and even the smallest thing he's very grateful for. And he never forgets any service you do. I am his servant. He's introducing himself that way. That's how he sees himself. There's another nice exchange with Lakshman. You recognize the painting. They're looking at the ornaments that Sita threw from their travel with Ravana. There's the fire where they made their friendship, etc. And Lakshman is asked by Ram, do you recognize these? Not that Ram doesn't recognize, but there's a saying that he speaks. I cannot recognize the bracelets or earrings, but because I always salute to her feet, I know these anklets very well. And we'll hear this again at the very end of this evening's talk. I hope we get there. Gosh, it's 10 after 8. Okay, I'm going to go faster. There's there's Vali being slain. Ram does the job, and after the 4 months of the rainy season, that's Sugriva, by the way. He's got a crown on. Sugriva is supposed to help Ram after he's gotten his wife back and kingdom back. Sugriva has made a pledge, but he gets it's 4 months of the rainy season and it's over, and he's still indulging in his comforts of life in the capital. And so here's a nice painting. Ram is very sorrowful, and he's expressing his sorrow to Lakshman and says, please go remind Sugriva, it's time to find Sita. A similar painting in the center, there's the conversation between the lords. They're at another mountain. Okay. We'll pretend that it doesn't jump around. I'll just say what's in the painting. There's something about technology. Certain paintings it doesn't like. We had this happen before. Okay. So in the painting that you can't see, there's Ram, they're Prashravana. Prashravana is the name of the mountain. And that's where Ram has been for 4 months. And he instructs Lakshman to go. There he's jumping around, going over to the right. Now he's going back to Kishkinda to remind Sugriva. But when he gets to Kishkinda, he's back into this angry Lakshman mood. He's got his bow, he's got his sword, he's ready to let him have it. And what he says is interestingly, taken from Mahabharata, or as a verse that's also found in Mahabharata, maybe that's the way it goes, where there's reference to Brahma upon seeing an ungrateful person. And Brahma says there's atonement, that's nishkritir. Nishkritir is atonement. There's atonement for killing of a Brahmin, for drinking liquor, or committing theft, or violating a sacred vow, but there's no atonement for one who is ungrateful. Now, during our winter retreat or seminar, whatever we call it, at Christmas time, this is going to be the theme, is gratitude. So it's very important. We'll touch on this at that time. There's some other very significant references, but he is saying you're ungrateful. You've gotten your kingdom, and now you're surrounded by opulence, and you're indulging in opulence, and if you're ungrateful to the person who helped you get your wife back and get your kingdom back. And Tara manages to pacify him. We heard about Tara, what she said, but we're focusing on Lakshman. And so Lakshman is pacified. Together, they go to see Ram. Ram is pacified. They're sent everywhere in all different directions to find Sita. And Hanuman finds Sita. And he comes before Ram and returns Sita's ornament given by her father to Ram at the time of their marriage. And so now off they go to get to Lanka. And there's the building of the bridge. And they're in Lanka, the next big scene with Lakshman. Lakshman is injured by the spear or the Shakti Shela weapon that was given by Mayadanava to him at the time of his marriage to Mandodari. And there's Hanuman bringing the herbs, but he has going to get the herbs, and he brings the herbs. The next thing that we know, so Lakshman is revived. I'm going quickly because of time. Something going way back to the life of Ravana, the son of Ravana was given the name Indrajit because Indrajit, he conquered Indra. One of Krishna's names is Ajita, right? What does Ajita mean? Can't be conquered. Jita means conquered. Ajita means can't be conquered. But Indrajit conquered Indra. That's how he got the name. So when they conquered Indra, they took him away and put him in prison, in Ravana's prison. So Brahma and the demigods went and appealed, please release him. And Indrajit got a benediction for releasing Indra. The benediction was, if I'm ever performing a yajna and I get to complete it, then a celestial chariot will rise from the fire, and no one can kill me while I'm riding that celestial chariot. So here he is in Lanka doing a yajna, and Vibhishan knows about that benediction that he got. So he brings Lakshman. It's like, he's a good spy. He knows the inside story of what Indrajit is up to. He's got a little secluded, secret place, far away from everything. And there he is, doing his yajna so that he can't be defeated. But Lakshman's there, and they stop the yajna. So Indrajit gets to be defeated, and the one who defeats Indrajit, Lakshman. Big battle, this and that. You see the big battle in the painting. And over on the left side, Ram is just getting news, what's going on over there on the battle scene. And in this painting, there's 3 parts. On the upper right corner, you see a fire. That's Indrajit's sacrificial fire. He was going to sacrifice a black goat, but that got interrupted. In the center is the battle with Indrajit, and Ram is with his assistants on that mountainside. And this painting is showing the head of Indrajit separated from the rest of his body. And Lakshman did it with his arrows. There's the head, that orange-looking thing in the lower left part of the painting, and the rest of his body in the upper left part of the painting. And again, the Arabic people did the painting. And here is another scene where Lakshman kills Indrajit. After Indrajit is killed, Ravana is devastated and furious, etc., etc., etc. Many things happen. Finally, it's just him and the remaining part of his army, and it's a 1-to-1 between him and Ram. And of course, Ram is victorious. And there he is. He's getting shot in the chest. And the last part we saw already. This is a Lakshmana exchange with Hanuman. This is a very nice painting. Back in Ayodhya, the war is over. Ram has been installed as the king, and they're giving charity to everybody. So Sita has a very special necklace, and she looks to Ram, who should get the necklace. He smiles, and she understands, you want me to decide? So then she contemplates, and she comes to the conclusion, the one who should be the recipient of this necklace is Hanuman. So she calls him forward. He falls at her feet. She places the necklace around his neck, and there we see him looking at the necklace. And the next scene is he starts chewing the priceless jewels on the necklace. And there we see Hanuman, excuse me, Lakshman says to Ram, why'd you give the necklace to a monkey? He's just making monkey business out of it. This priceless necklace. Ram smiles and says, I think you have to ask Hanuman. Hanuman says, I assumed that it was going to be priceless. When I looked at it closely, there's no names of Ram on the necklace. So that's to be discarded. And then Lakshman says, well, Hanuman, I don't see the name of Ram all over your body. Maybe it's useless and you should discard it too. And that's where this scene is. He opens up his chest and shows Ram inside. And it, so Lakshman says, Hanuman, there's no devotee like you. You're the best. And Hanuman says, I am the slave of Ram and your servant too. That's who I am. That's how that little story ends. And that's the end of the Ayodhya visit. But there's a last remaining part that the Lakshman plays, and that's bringing Sita to Valmiki's ashram. That's Valmiki, and that's Valmiki's ashram. And there's Sita, and he's feeling terrible about the whole thing. And Sita speaks to him, and she wants him to carry a message back to Ram, questioning this decision. And she says to Lakshman, surely you must have noticed that I'm pregnant. And then here's the verse from Valmiki Ramayana. O auspicious one, O faultless one, your body is not seen by me, as your feet alone were the object of my vision till now. Oh, how shall I behold you separated from Ram, dwelling in the forest? And then finally, just before he departs, he's heading back to Ayodhya. Having spoken her message for Ram, Sita dropped again to the ground. Lakshman looked at her with tear-filled eyes. Unable to make any reply, he cried loudly and bowed his head to the earth. He then walked around Sita with his palms folded. After regaining his balance of mind, he said, O faultless one, to say farewell, I now look upon your face for the first time. Oh, how can I bear to see you separated from Ram and dwelling in the deep forest? Very touching. This is about Lakshman's mood and personality and his character. And here he is, there's back in Ayodhya, giving Ram the information of what happened. Ram rules for some time. He places a murti of Sita by his side from which he rules. He does many, many, many things. And here's the departing part with Lakshman. A Brahmin comes to visit. He requests audience with Ram. Ram agrees. The Brahmin says, O Emperor, no one should hear my words that pass between us. If anyone should interrupt us, then they must be killed by you. Ram agrees. And then the Brahmin turns into death personified and says, time is up. You've fulfilled your purpose here on earth. It's time for you to wind up your pastimes. And Ram says, so be it. And just at that time, who should show up? Durvasa Muni. And Durvasa Muni is requesting immediate audience with Ram. And the person who receives them is Laxmana. So Laxmana comes running, not knowing what this Brahmin had promised. And he says, here's Dasarath. You better, not Dasarath, Durvasamuni. Durvasamuni. You have to deal with Durvasamuni. So he deals with Durvasamuni. It's a very nice exchange. And then the Brahmin says, you have to keep your word. We got interrupted. And so Lakshman said to Ram, I must die now. For that was the promise you made to death. Punish me in accord with your word to that deity. Ram is, how can I kill you? It's not possible. And then the decision is made. Ram looked at Lakshman. I leave you, O son of Sumitra. Let virtue not suffer, desertion and slaying considered equal according to the wise. Therefore, I abandon you today. Valmiki Ramayana. Because there's a prayer in 5th canto, chapter 19, that Hanuman says it's not possible for Ram to have abandoned Sita or Lakshman. It's a Leela, in other words. And so Lakshman took it seriously. He's abandoned by Ram. He goes to the bank of the Sarayu. Lakshman suspended his breathing and entered a deep trance. As he sat absorbed in thought of Ram, he departed for the spiritual world. Just not the same, but something similar to Balaram's departure from this world. It's different, but similar. And then here's the concluding slide for tonight. This is everybody goes. Ram can't, without Lakshman. Accompanied by the chanting of Ram's name, Ramchandra entered the Sarayu and ascended to Saketa, his eternal abode above. He was accompanied by Sugriva, his brothers, and all sentient living entities except Hanuman and Minda and Dvidvida, who willingly sacrificed their lives to ascend with him. So, in other words, he entered the Sarayu, and everybody entered the Sarayu. They went to the spiritual realm, and who's left? I mean, all moving beings were gone. But Hanuman was behind. According to Valmiki Ramayana, Minda and Dudvita also remained behind. And that's the end of the description about Lakshmana. And here we are at an hour and a half time. I could have divided into little parts, but I wanted to complete. So we have some online people. And if the online people want to participate in some discussion on this, you're invited to send something to chat or unmute yourself or however it works. We have a question. Do we have a microphone? Look at that. Is it going to work? For tonight. Okay.
Does Ramayana contain all the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita?
It contains the essential teachings found in Bhagavad Gita. That's it. Yes.
So Guru Maharaj, we heard that Lakshmana is exemplifying mode of service.
Sound.
And but for Balaram, we hear both mode of service and spiritual strength. So are there any references in Ramayana where Lakshmana is glorified for spiritual strength as well? And part two of the question is how spiritual strength and mode of service? How does that complement each other?
Oh, how can you do service without strength? So it's, I'm not aware of any explicit statement. It says, but it does seem implicit. Without strength, how can you do anything? Without strength, how can you do service? For sure. But I'm not aware of any explicit statement about spiritual strength from Lakshman. But it's a tattva, so it must be there. Okay. Anyone online would like to participate? Speak now, because we're going to close shop if you don't.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Uh, please accept my obeisances, Maharaj. I wanted to ask, there are many books, and you have already discussed it many times, but I don't remember if I heard anything about the Gita Press Ramayan. So, how much authentic that is, Maharaj?
I'm not an authority on the Ramayana enough to answer that question. I know, like, a 35,000 feet kind of answer to your question, which is, it is a standard which is often referred to, and therefore, there is some kind of general acceptance or common acceptance of its being authoritative. And otherwise, the language is very archaic. And like, for example, I discussed with Purna Pragya Prabhu, who made his presentation of Valmiki Ramayana, and that's where it was taken from. He just kind of, made it more readable, or more contemporary language than the old English language. But so as far as I know, it has its authenticity in presentation. There's others, because I'm not so knowledgeable in this, but there are others that I consult, and Princeton University has their translation by two different professors, and it's available online, a digital version, with the Sanskrit and everything. So, that depends on someone's inclination for reading, and how careful they are with what they read and the translations of what they read, because Sanskrit can be translated in different ways, can't it? By different translators. But the short answer to your question is, it's generally considered an authentic, transparent version of Valmiki Ramayana.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Something else?
I just had one quick question, Maharaj, that I'm not sure if you have already covered it, Maharaj, but why didn't Srila Prabhupada write anything, not much about Ramayana?
Why? The principal deity for the followers of Lord Chaitanya is Krishna. Now, in the Bhagavatam, Rama's pastimes are mentioned, Sringadev's pastimes are mentioned, and they were discussed in classes, but the primary focus of the Bhagavatam itself is Krishna. And so that's the primary emphasis, that Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, these two literatures, are our principal literatures. And for that reason, he didn't spend so much time with Ramayana.
Yes, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you for such a nice, inspiring presentation. If I heard you correctly and saw the slide, one of them or two slides showed Sage Vashishta pointing finger
Yes.
at KK.
Yes.
So that was it's for someone so saintly like Sage Vashishta, I I did not know that there was such a scene. So
Well, that's
how do we look
artists.
at
That's an artist. He verbally chastised her.
Hmm.
That's in Valmiki Ramayana. But pointing his finger and gesturing like that is another thing. That's an artist's embellishment.
Okay.
But he has the right. He has the authority to admonish her.
Hmm.
And publicly too. He has that position. So he can act, and he has exercised it. Hmm.
This pastime of Sita being abducted and Rama chastising Lakshmana for committing the mistake. Um, that's something that sits heavy on me. I wonder, um, we all commit mistakes. Um, uh, I wonder what was specifically in Lakshmana's heart at that time, because he recognizes that he committed a mistake too. Um, I'm just
And it was the circumstance was such that at least she was saying that if you don't, I'll take my life. So it was what a difficult position to be in. So the affective side of your question is how could Ram chastise someone who is in such a predicament without even hearing about what was the circumstance under which he left? Uh, my thought is going to something that um, Hanuman said to Sugriva. Please understand that this is about Ram being angry. The rainy season is over and you're still twiddling your thumbs. Um, Ram's anger has to do with his strong feeling for Sita. So don't take it personally. He's in great anxiety over the loss of Sita. So just understand that's where his anger is coming from. And don't take it personally. So, of course, he's the Supreme Lord. He's omniscient, but he's playing the role of one who's not. And, allowing that Sita gets kidnapped by the circumstance that he set up. So he's showing this, there's this overall lesson that's in the Bhagavatam, 5:19:6, something like that, or 4, where Hanuman says Ram not only came into this world to annihilate Ravana, but to teach a lesson to worldly people. When there's too much attachment for woman or one's wife, then one is surely going to suffer. And he wanted to teach that, so he's teaching that. And when one is suffering from too much attachment, then one says and does untoward things, because discretion is taken away by that attachment and the anger that flows from that attachment, the loss of an object of this world. So he's just teaching a lesson, and he's teaching the lesson through his dear Lakshman. Now, it could be taught in different ways. And how is Lakshman taking it? That's another part of your question. He's already feeling terrible. Now he's feeling triple terrible. And sometimes that, feeling really terrible about something is the way to learn a lesson about that something, even if it's circumstantial. And when it's coming from the hand of a perfect person, you can take it more easily than coming from the hand of a worldly person. Prabhupada would sometimes, my understanding from a distance is, Prabhupada would sometimes chastise people very severely because he knew they needed it. And others he wouldn't chastise at all because they couldn't take it. And there's other adages, and one that's coming to mind is what Raghunath Das Goswami said to the Chaduri who was trying to collect taxes from his uncle, his father and his uncle. He said, "You're like you're like my father. In our village life, you're like my father. And my, brothers sometimes they quarrel, and the next day they're sitting down friendly. So one doesn't take these things too seriously. So those that are cultured understand. They don't take when a brother says something that's like really heavy. Cultured person understands. It's coming out of his attachment to Sita. And, there's different ways of looking at. From a non-violent communication point of view, you wouldn't do what Ram did. And for transcendental purposes, and when the relationships are really close like that, it doesn't just disturb the relationship. Yes. Yeah, sure.
Going back to what I was asking about Sage Vashishta. So in the way to look at it is also he was publicly chastising Mother Kaikeyi because of his love for Lord Rama.
Yeah. And also violation of what is etiquette.
Yeah.
She was in violation of etiquette. Yeah, she's got a couple of boons. You don't use a couple of boons this way. She's totally selfish. What about all the citizens? How is what you do going to impact thousands and thousands and thousands of people? And her own reputation.
Mm.
And her son. She's thoughtless. So correction from a teacher to a student or a preceptor to the follower, it has its place in
Right.
certain circumstances.
Mhm. So that's what distinguishes a saint's anger, transcendental
Yes.
anger, versus a materialist anger,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's not directed at the individual as much as
Well, it's for the benefit of everyone, yes, but it's the individual. If they don't get corrected, they can easily do the same foolishness again.
right.
And then again, so many people impacted because of their foolishness.
Hmm.
So when someone is in a authority position, can be a spiritual or can be a managerial authority position, and if something goes unspoken, just because, whatever the reason goes unspoken. It's a disturbance. It promotes that disturbance, and persons will become disturbed that that nothing was said and done. Right. So yeah, how to say and what to say, when to say, and those are all subtle things. And we don't know the relationship that Vashishta had with the royal family and everything. You have something.
Guru Maharaj, isn't it sometimes also think that Krishna will autocorrect the course rather than the person correcting and maybe also getting entangled karmically with that person because of, you know, correcting them in
Yes, that's one of the options. Specifically, if one has an authority relationship, there's more responsibility to say something or do something than if one doesn't. I mean, what you're saying, I've said maybe 50 times. And one of the lessons I learned from Borijan Prabhu. You've heard me say this. There's some things, you're concerned about. You just leave it between that person and Krishna. But that's not necessarily, a managerial or spiritual authority relationship. But the autocorrect is one of the options. In some things, Borijan's words, some things are just between that person and Krishna. Krishna will have to autocorrect it.
This is from Amar Mataji. It's a comment. Yesterday's response that relationship is not complete without separation and it has both meeting and separation has given me a new perspective to understand relationships. Also, it led to the understanding that separation establishes the prominence of service over attachment and gives clarity on our goal. I wish to express my gratitude for this. Kindly correct me if this understanding is not correct. Thank you.
What I halfway through the comment, I was thinking of an explanation I heard someone give about meeting and separation are essential in any relationship. Someone was I won't use the name. Someone was speaking, and they said to answer this, question or to illustrate the topic. They said, supposing so and so Prabhu, I sent you I called you up and said I'd like to come visit your home. Would that be all right? And you would say, yeah, it's great. So I'd like to come for 30 days. And I don't want you to be any place other than in my physical presence for 30 days. How do you feel about that? And so what about going to work? What about going to sleep? What about brushing your teeth? What about, there are things in any relationship that there's not constant being with the other person. There's some separation together with being with the person that's natural to any relationship, even someone that you have great affection for. So, and for those we have great affection for, it's just part of a relationship. So, and it sounds like what she said is correct. And I kind of was distracted with my thoughts with the second half. It's okay. I don't need to hear it again. Ramananda?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. You were saying about the auto corrections from Krishna, but by that time it will be too late and so much chaos and disturbance will be there. So that's what I'm thinking.
It's not clear. Are you clear what he's saying? Yeah, but that's up to Krishna, whether it's too late or not too late. Just like this example that our Sri Vaishnava Acharya's comment, 13 years later, Ram is correcting something that Lakshman said way back in Ayodhya. And some things it's just, anyway. We're not controllers, we're servants. And and as servants, we have to make some choices. How are we going to serve? That's not that you don't switch that into an off position. It's always on the on position, making discriminations. And there may be some situations where it's too late, but there may be some situations where it's just right. It's true. There are some situations where it's too late. Okay, I think we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.